Swing the hammer, turn the screw, cut the saw and stick the glue, shave the shim, clamp the vise, cut once, measure twice.
Well, hello to all of you do-it-yourselfers out there in do-it-yourself land. Welcome back to America's Funniest Handyman, and more importantly, welcome to my shower. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to take my clothes off just yet, okay? Because my shower is broken. As a matter of fact, I stink a little bit because last night our shower diverter valve decided to stop working. There's a number of reasons why you might need to repair or replace your shower diverter valve. Maybe it's old, maybe it's corroded, maybe it's broken, maybe you just don't like the way the thing looks anymore, or more importantly, maybe it's leaking. Who knows? All right? But you're definitely going to have some patience, and you're going to need to budget some time. The good news is my video is going to be really fast, even though this repair might take me quite a few hours to get it finished. So let's take a quick look at the kind of tools that you're going to need for this troubleshooting expedition, and then we'll get right into the repair. Okay, I'm going to try and be real fast about this. You're going to need 1 or 2 pairs of channel locks and maybe another extra set of pliers. You're going to need several different types of screwdrivers, a couple of rigid flathead screwdrivers, and I usually like to have a nice multi-screwdriver with a ratcheting attachment. You're going to need a good headlamp. I recommend a good headlamp for when you get into things. If you're old like me, you're going to need a pair of reading glasses because once you get this thing open, man, once you get in there, some of those things are small and difficult to see. You're also going to need, as always, some lubrication. I like to hose the whole thing down with some WD-40 a little bit before I get started. Hopefully it'll crack some of those things loose because typically shower valves have been sitting in the same spot for a long time and those nuts and screws are difficult to get out. And you're going to want a shower cap if you think it might get wet, and a bucket for some of your extra parts. I always have a bucket handy whenever I'm doing mechanical stuff like this for all the little nuts and bolts and stuff. And if you really want to be thorough and handy, I would cover up the shower drain so that some of the small screws don't fall down into the shower. And last but not least, you're gonna need some patience. And if you think you might run out of patience before you finish the repair, run down to the hardware store and grab yourself a can of Johnson's Big Boy Patience in a Can. Johnson's Big Boy Patience allows you to grow up for a change, evolve, and stop acting like a total creep. The next time your job is on the line and you want to be the better man, reach for Johnson's Big Boy Patience in a Can.
Available at your local Ace Hardware store.
I've already shut off the water line that feeds my valve, and I recommend you do the same thing, because if you accidentally break something while you're taking out one of these valves, you're not going to be happy if the water's still on. And trust me, if a valve has been in place for 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes they're not the easiest thing to get out. You'll see that in just a second. So now come on in a little bit closer, and I'm going to show you how working on one of these valves is kind of like cracking a safe or breaking into a bank. So to break into a valve like this and get back behind it, you got to start from the outermost point and work your way back step by step. To get this handle off right here, you can't just pull it off. There's typically going to be a little set screw in the side of it that is controlled by probably an Allen nut or something like that. Or in this case, we have a button. And if there's a little button on here on any valve, I can almost guarantee you that there's a screw back behind that button somewhere. So what you do to get the button off, get out of there. To get the button off, you got to get a screwdriver back in behind it. And trust me, I'm making it look easy today. But yesterday I got this button off and it was quite difficult. Okay, so the button's off. Remember I told you to wear a headlamp, right? Well, this is where your headlamp's going to come in handy because you want to look down inside of here. See that screw back in there? Can you see it? We got to get that screw out. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out right now. This is where having a multi-screwdriver comes in handy. Again, I made that look easy, but sometimes that screw has been sitting in there so long, like this one, that it's corroded. Now that I've got that set screw out of there, I can take this valve off with a nice, big screwdriver.
Excuse me, darling.
Now I want to take this off with some channel locks, and if you were going to try and save this valve, I'm not trying to save this valve, but if you were trying to keep this valve and just repair it and take the guts out of it, then what you would want to do is you would use a cloth inside, like a washcloth or an old rag inside of here to keep the teeth from biting into the nice finish of your plumbing. But once you get that loose, you just unthread it and take it out. And then now I've got these screws right here.
Maybe you can't tell a joke, but when your stuff gets broke, what do you do? You give Tommy a call, whether it's large or small. There's no project he can't see through. Let's laugh and learn from this handyman, with Kitty hold this by his side, fixing stuff in a serious way with a not so serious guy.
Not quite sure if you guys can tell from there, but nothing about the new valve is going to work with the old valve, so I'm going to have to go ahead and replumb the whole thing. I'm going to break open the wall in the back, and first I'm going to take a bunch of measurements before I go ahead and cut open the sheetrock. Okay, I'm in the closet with all my clothes and stuff, so hey shirts, how you doing? Good to see you. Some of those shirts don't get worn that much, and I think they miss me when I'm gone. Anyway, there's the hole I need. I'm going to make it that big. Why am I going to make it so damn big? Well, because if you're going to cut a hole in the sheetrock to work on the plumbing inside of it, it doesn't make a difference if I'm patching a 2-foot hole or a 3-foot hole, to be honest with you. So I want to cut from where I'm plumbing the valve all the way up to where I need to install the new shower head. That's all. Going to cut that hole, and then I'll show you how we plumb it. I'm not wearing a wig or my hard hat at the moment. I'm just having a good hair day. So anyway, there you go. Okay, as you can see, I'm going to be replacing this valve right here with this valve. It's going to be facing that way, which means this is going to be slightly more narrow, but the PEX is a little bit flexible and forgiving. So I'm just going to replace these two pieces with longer pieces, and that'll be that. I'm not going to give you a tutorial on PEX today because that's not the name of this episode. You'll just have to pull up something else until I make one of those. And if you're using copper and dealing with copper lines, I highly recommend shark bites instead of trying to sweat if you haven't sweat before. And then also sweating in close quarters like this next to wooden framing lumber isn't probably the best idea either. Okay, so I'm going to set up the camera and get to it, and I'm not too far away from taking a shower. My wife's going to be very happy about that. As you can see, I've got my support blocking cut on either side, and I slid it up out of the way to expose the valve. First thing I'm going to do to make things easy is I'm going to cut the PEX with some PVC cutters, and that'll free up the valve so that I can sweat this off right here. I'm going to heat this fitting up right here with a torch, and then it'll just fall right off. And then we'll take a bunch of measurements and plumb in the new one. What do you think of that? Got some channel locks and a torch. This thing gets really hot. Anyway, I'm going to heat up this spot right here. I'm going to hold the valve with my pliers, and after I get it to a certain temperature, just pop right off. Ooh, that's hot. I'm going to drop that in some cold water. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and cut these fittings off of this PEX with a Dremel and a metal cutoff wheel. They make a special tool just for this purpose, but it's expensive, and I already had the Dremel, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So come on in here close.
Drill the hole and fill the hole. Put the thingy in the hole. Be sure you're having fun. Measure twice, cut once.
Okay, as you can see, at a slight angle with a Dremel and a metal cutoff wheel, I was able to cut through both of these guys without cutting through the PEX, which preserves the fitting on the inside. Now I'm going to take these off with some screwdrivers and some pliers. Now I can cut through the PEX with a sharp knife. That's all. Now I can reuse that fitting. How cool is that? This is going to be the height of the new valve, and I've got to sweat this top fitting onto this piece of copper that's used to go to the shower head. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to cut this copper back to my little mark here for the right height, and then I'm going to sweat on this one fitting. This is a pipe cutter that's made for small spaces. Now I'm gonna sand, give a light sanding to the outside of this guy. Then I'm gonna go ahead and sand the inside of this guy. Now I'm gonna add some flux.
To the all over outside of this, and flux to the inside of that fit.
All right, my valve is gonna sit like that, so I'm gonna get all 3 of these male fittings ready with some Teflon tape. Now, as I install each one of these, I'm going to use a little bit of non-drying pipe thread sealer. Now I'm going to use these 2 threaded fittings that'll transition to PEX for me on an elbow. If you can see that, that's an elbow. I'm not going to tighten everything down just yet, and now I'm going to connect this, 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 to this. Put a little mark on it. Now I can tighten it up. All right, as you can see, the back side of our valve is all plumbed and ready to go. Before you move ahead from this point, you definitely want to turn on the water and make sure you don't have any leaks. And if you're using copper for the first time, I recommend using shark bite fittings instead of trying to sweat copper. Sweating copper is a learned skill, and I recommend practicing that at your mother-in-law's house. Hey, I'm ready to secure our blocking board here. Then I'm going to close it up with some sheetrock, and then we'll put the trim on the front and set everything as per manufacturer's instructions. Well, that was all the hard stuff. The rest is easy. All you got to do is follow the directions. Well, we're all up and running, and the things that I want you guys to remember today is, if you're going to take on a project like this around the house, there's some important things you want to do. You want to bring lots of patience, take a lot of measurements, read the directions, and be willing to take 2 or 3 trips to the hardware store. Get some ice cream while you're there. That's all we have time for today, you guys. I gotta take my new shower for a test spin. Working all right. Hey, and as always, folks, thanks for letting us bring a whole lot of experience and a little bit of humor onto your job site.
Let's laugh and learn from this handyman, with Kitty hold this by his side, fixing stuff in a serious way, the not so serious guy.